So, the final season of You was not very good, to say the least.
Delulu.
This season, compared to the other seasons, had some parts in it that I genuinely could not watch. I don't want to sound like a hater, I'm sorry. Not only was the plot armor literally netherite, but there were a lot of things that straight up didn't even make sense to me. The first thing that didn't make sense to me was Bronte's entire character. She was written by someone who is obviously not Gen Z, but thinks they know exactly how Gen Z acts, and it literally just ruined the entire thing. Like, we do not say Delulu. I genuinely don't understand how she was manipulated by Joe into thinking she was special. She researched this guy for years. She was convinced that he killed Beck. She knew that he would be a psycho. She knew that he would be manipulative. She knew all of this. She knew his entire backstory and all the girls that he did the same exact thing to, but when it came to her, she thought that she was special. And I understand this is how they're trying to show how good he was at manipulating women, but I don't understand how you try to do all that and then just have one simple conversation with Marion and it changes her entire perspective. And she's like, you know what? He really doesn't love me. Girl, please. What did you spend the last several years doing then? Was that just all for nothing? Speaking of the last several years, no way they introduced this girl in the last season and she's the one to bring him down. Are we serious right now? All these other characters that we were built to love, like Love Quinn, Delilah, Ellie. It's like those seasons never even happened. Love Quinn, Delilah, they were just not mentioned at all. Even Ellie was not mentioned at all. Like, she could have came back, but they didn't even bring her back. They just decided to introduce a whole new character, give her insane plot armor, and then make her end this entire multiple year-long story. Speaking of insane plot armor, did you guys see the last couple episodes of this show? First of all, getting Joe to trust her again is extremely unrealistic, and I don't care how desperate he is, I don't even think that he would be that desperate to trust her again. Regardless of who he was in this last season, where we really get to see who he truly is as a person, I do not think that he would have trusted her again. He might have been a little bit desperate, but he's not that desperate to go on and make mistakes and trust her. He didn't even trust Love Quinn. He did his research on the plant she was growing. He kept stuff in his pocket just in case she tried to drug him. But this random girl is plotting against him their entire relationship. He finds out their entire relationship is fake and she's actually just an op. But he's like, oh yeah, sure, you can come into my life again. Like, yeah, we're totally fine. We're good. No, that literally would have never happened, and it bothers me that the writers did it like that. Adding on to her plot armor, the last episode of this show was absolutely just ridiculous. In what world is a woman getting drowned, shot, hurt, and everything else in the book, yet she still gets up and powers through this all while she's losing so much blood, catches up to him to shoot him and like be his end all be all? No, she should have died. No, first of all, she shouldn't have even been there to begin with. That's a whole different topic I already talked about. But no, she's not getting up from that. She really is not getting up from that, and I don't care what anybody says, like, she is not getting up from that. And to me, that ruined the entire ending because it was just so unrealistic that I just couldn't get past the fact that it was so unrealistic. So now that Bronte is out of the way, let's talk about Kate. I personally do not like Kate at all. I don't know, I've never liked her as a character. I really just haven't. And this last season made me not like her even more. At the end of season 4, Joe did not want to live anymore and he tried to act on that. Kate was very upset by this, and this is where Joe just decides to be honest with himself and what he's done and told Kate what he's done. And in all the time that passed, it just doesn't make sense that he did not tell her about everything that he's done. Because in season 5, she seems shocked about all the people that he's killed, as if he didn't tell her that he was honestly not a good person. But then she seemed shocked by this, which doesn't even make sense because they were married for multiple years before this next season started. And then she seemed upset by it, even though she related to him and accepted him for who he was, because she literally did similar things. And I'm not saying that you can't have a realization and be like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Who am I married to? But they should have shown that she was kind of iffy about marrying him, kind of not feeling the best vibes, but they had such a deep connection because of what he's done and because of what she's done, and they bonded over that. So I don't understand taking that all away in the last season just to make sure that Bronte gets the last hoorah. It feels like they did that for absolutely nothing, because then why did Kate end up getting Nadia? Why did they bring Marion in? Kate also had insane plot armor this last season. I mean, that fire in the basement, no way she lived from that. And again, that quite literally ruined it for me, because why make such a dramatic scene like that? make it seem like they're gonna die and then be like, oh, surprise, they lived from this fire that literally no one in real life would survive from. Surprise! There were just so many dramatic scenes for absolutely no reason because they ended up just being completely meaningless. So let's just go through some of these dramatic scenes that ended up being completely meaningless. So the first one, I'm gonna go with the big dramatic reveal that Bronte was actually not who she said she was. That whole thing with Clayton being her pretend ex-boyfriend and then Joe actually killing him and acting on it, and Bronte seeing right then and there his actions and who this guy really is. But oh my gosh, wait, she's in love with him. So that entire reveal quite literally didn't matter at all because she was gonna save him anyway because she's in love with him and he's in love with her. One of the last scenes of the movie where Joe drowns Bronte, we're like, oh my gosh, she's dead. He gets away again. And then 2 seconds later, she's just up holding her wound where she literally would not be able to get up. And she's like, I got you now. That whole scene was literally just for nothing. She could have just been 100% okay and did the same exact thing. Like, you didn't need all the dramatic stuff to happen. And trust me, I love a good girl boss story, but this was so unnecessary here and it just seemed like way too girl bossy, if that makes sense. The whole fire scene was so dramatic for absolutely no reason because literally no one died in it. There was this whole dramatic scene of Joe and Kate talking and she's like, yep, we finally got you, like you're finally caught, like we're both gonna die in here. And then Bronte comes in and saves Joe, which I do think should have happened. I definitely think someone should have been saved. But then it's like Kate is in the fire and then she doesn't die. It's like, that is just so unrealistic. Like, what is the point of having this whole dramatic scene of them talking and being like, oh, you're gonna die, to then no one dying at all and then it just be a waste of time? It just seems like it was there for filler. I don't know, that really just made me mad. And this is not the first time the show has had a very dramatic reveal just for it to not matter in 2 seconds, like when Love Quinn was revealed to be this absolutely psychotic girl, but then Joe just ended up killing her anyway after she killed Candace. But this season was just absolutely ridiculous with these. I mean, it just seemed like they were trying to make it 10 episodes and they just had nothing to put there, so they just had to keep contradicting themselves, and that was awful to watch. I just couldn't watch it. And that brings me into my next point about pointing out all of the fillers in this last season because there were just 1,000 of them. I will say that I did like seeing Bronte's backstory about how she got into wanting to catch Joe. That was pretty cool to watch and I did like that plot twist. But this last season, I feel like there was so much intimacy that was just shoved in our faces that didn't even need to be there whatsoever. The first one that I noticed was that really just weird scene with Joe and Bronte just staring at each other where he like tucks her hair behind her ear. Ugh. And of course I love well-placed intimacy in shows, but this last season there were basically none. Like, it was just so awful. And I'm not kidding when I say I quite literally had to skip over every single intimate scene with them. I genuinely had to skip over it. And I don't think that that was on purpose. Her as a character, I mean, I already went through all the things I didn't like about her, but her character, it just seemed like so unnatural. It was just not a pleasant sight to see. Another thing that I thought was so unnatural in this show was the way they tried to bring social media, Gen Z, and present day things into the show. They really just failed miserably, if I'm being honest. Again, as I said, the Gen Z people in this show were written by people who think that's how Gen Z act. And to be honest, it's kind of offensive because they did it so bad. Getting on Reddit and starting to talk to people who are in a group, I guess that makes sense. That has happened before and that can happen, though it's very, very rare. All of the social media posts were so bad. Like, they were just extremely unrealistic and I've never seen anyone post on social media like that in my entire life. And they kept trying to throw Cardi B in there to try to make it funny, but it just wasn't funny because it's like, that's not how we act and that's not how people tweet. I see what they were trying to do, but I feel like they should have just asked someone from Gen Z if this is realistic, and I'm pretty sure any of us would have just said, oh, that is not realistic at all. Do not write that in there. They tried to make it how they perceive us. I will say that I love the inclusivity in this last season because I think inclusivity is extremely important. When you see someone like you, it makes you feel better. It's just great for representation. I don't know. I feel like we weren't represented very well in this last season. It almost felt like they were kind of making fun of Gen Z because of how over the top they made us. And obviously the ending I had an issue with. Of course I did. I do think it's good that they made Joe go to jail because either way the show is gonna end. Like, I wouldn't have cared if he died either. I mean, either way the show was over. I love how they ended with Henry saying, "You're the monster under my bed." I mean, that was honestly just perfect. But how he got to jail was just awful, just absolutely awful. I have touched on this ending a little bit before in this video, so I don't want to perseverate, but obviously I hated the ending and I don't think Bronte should have been the one to take him down. I think it should have been Kate, one of the women he did wrong, his son. Literally Ellie would have been a better choice. If Ellie came back, that literally would have just been so peak. And I'm kind of upset that no one actually found out the true story. They didn't say anything about Delilah. They didn't say anything about 40. They didn't say anything about Ellie. And that really bothered me because that was so wrong to me, and that was literally my favorite season of this entire show, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to that. And especially because 40 figured it all out. He figured it all out, and there was no justice for him. There was none. Like, they could have done so much with that. Like, he literally figured it out. And he died, and then they acted like he wasn't smart, and nothing happened with that, and then they just moved on. And I feel like after that, there were just not really any likable characters. I don't really think that Nadia was very likable. I don't really think that Kate was very likable, if I'm being honest. And the most likable character in season 4 was a guy that wasn't even real. And the best character in the entire show didn't even matter in season 5 because Love Quinn was literally mentioned maybe one time. I'm not here to give you alternate endings. There's probably more videos on that. Honestly, I could make a video on that because I feel like I have a pretty creative mind, not gonna lie. So if you want to hear my crazy alternate endings that I feel like would have been 10 times better than the ending that we got, the horrible ending that we got, just let me know because I feel like I could make a pretty great video about that. And honestly, I'm just thinking about it right now and I definitely should just make a video about that even if you don't want one. Anyways, let me know how you felt about this video. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. I don't really care because we all have our own opinions, but you know, say it in the comments below and I'll read it. And if you're still watching, comment something below that you would have changed from this last season. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.